having a hard time feeling remorseful and unwilling to apologize for calling my brother out and asking him to vacate my property. I've given him many chances to stop this behavior, but my brother won't stop shaming me for being a club dancer before I got my prestigious job. These are his literal words. Now I'm a nurse anaesthetist. He's been making offhand remarks about me having been a dancer since he found out 6 years ago. He gets on these long tirades about how I'm ungodly and unholy and that the sins I committed can never be forgiven unless I repent and let God into my heart. I am not religious. I'm certainly not a Christian and never will be one, but my brother refuses to accept this. Also, I only started dancing because his gambling addiction ruined my and our parents' life. He remortgaged their house, took out loans and several credit cards in our parents' name, and even sold our parents' identity to his former dealer. I didn't know how bad the situation was until I came home one day from university and found strangers living in our house. My father was too embarrassed to let me know they were living out of their car. They also never reported my brother to the police because my parents didn't want him back in prison. The last time he went in for 2 years, my parents and I were blackmailed to pay his prison debt. So when I found out my parents, baby sister and baby brother were living out of their car, I decided to work as a dancer. I made good money, and with that money I could house my family, pay off my parents' and brother's debt, and put my younger siblings through college and university. During that time I also paid for his rehab, and he got his crap together. Now he's happily married, employed, sober, and has a child on the way. Last Sunday our parents invited some people over for a big catered dinner. My brother and his wife thought this would be the perfect time to turn it into what he called a shame-evention and embarrass me in front of all the guests. I completely lost it. I was so enraged that I spent most of the evening cussing him and my sister-in-law out. I reminded him I would never have been a club dancer if he hadn't tried to ruin us. I drew up an eviction notice on Monday and sent it to him. I want to cut all ties with him and his family. I am truly done with him. Almost everyone is telling me I'm right in being angry, but that it's terrible to kick him and his wife out when they're due to have their first child in 9 weeks. My parents are begging me to forgive him, and honestly, I feel like I have been and am being reasonable. I've given them 90 days. I am done being called the loose woman of Babylon and the downfall of mankind. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Am I the idiot? Edit, for clarity, I danced for 5 years and used the money for that to claw myself and my family out of debt and pay for my brother's rehab. I haven't danced in over a decade. I paid for my sister's IVF and bought the house my brother and his wife live in with my nurse anaesthetist money. He doesn't feel bad about asking me for help now because this money wasn't made from sinning. Also, my sister-in-law is just as bad as he is. Oh wow, not the idiot. I wouldn't give him 90 days. I'd get some friends to throw all of the stuff out of your house. Change the locks and call the cops that he's trying to break in. I would never talk to your brother again, and if you ever do that witch stuff comments, ask him how his gambling deals are doing and how are the accommodations in jail. Yeah, he's born again, which is always a joke. He ruined your family, made them sleep in the car, and dares to blame your past on everything else. And if you're so evil, why is he living with you? Forget his baby, forget his life. Go no contact with him forever and talk to your parents about their reaction, and that's what he's doing to you. Can you imagine being one of the guests and wishing to fall off the earth? The brother can't have it both ways. Both rant about OP's past and yet conveniently downplay, if not ignore, their own role and, more importantly, at the same time, benefit from OP's sinful behavior, as the brother calls it. Hopefully OP never has to talk to him again, but if she does, she should ask for all the money she paid for his rehab, bail back, and IVF. OP, you did what you had to do after your parents enabled him to the point of losing everything but their lives and the clothes on their back. He should be thanking you, not shaming you. You did nothing shameful, unlike him. And I'd be cutting off my parents next. This has golden child versus scapegoat written all over it, and my heart aches for you. Absolute goddess, I wish you all the blessings and joy a life could hold. I, female 27, had my first baby a few days ago. My birth went well, but I'm still recovering in quite a bit of pain and have been very sensitive emotionally since giving birth. My husband, 27, and I told our families that we'd likely have no visitors for the first 1 or 2 weeks, just to set expectations, but privately we decided to play it by ear and see how we felt. Our second day home with our baby was rough on me, and all I wanted was for my mom to comfort and help me. So my husband and I decided to call my mom and have her come over. She was such a significant help, both emotionally and with the baby, so we had her come by every other day since. She went above and beyond to help us. Also, my bestie and her husband live down the street and have been dropping off meals and treats and walking our dog for us, but I don't consider that visiting as much as favours and errands. Mother-in-law found out about my mom's visits and was very upset, so we decided to have her over for a brief visit. Day 6 postpartum. She said they'd bring food and arrived around dinner time. I have celiac disease, so I cannot eat gluten. Mother-in-law brought homemade lasagna, pasta salad, muffins and 2 types of cookies, all full gluten, and explained to me that she was sorry but she had limited notice and only had time to make my husband's favourites. I immediately started crying, and my husband thanked his mom but took me to the other room. He told me he'd take care of it and ordered a delivery on the spot. I composed myself, introduced mother-in-law and father-in-law to baby, and then mother-in-law made another comment about how she wished she could have brought food for me, but it was just so time-consuming and burdensome to make things gluten-free. I snapped and told her she was rude and told her I was angry. Toward the end of the visit, my BFF's husband knocked on the door to come walk our dog, and to my surprise bought us a homemade gluten-free tiramisu. I started crying again and thanked him profusely, and he told us it was no problem and surprisingly easy to make. Mother-in-law was angry. She realized that they'd been coming by and started complaining about how wrong this all was because she had to wait 6 days to see the baby and was faced with my anger. My husband took my baby from her, and father-in-law snapped at her to drop it. They stayed and chatted for a short while, and when Bestie's husband came back to drop our dog off, I sent him home with one of the batches of cookies mother-in-law brought, which upset mother-in-law. Mother-in-law has been texting and calling and trying to rally people against me since. My husband has my back and even went the next day to drop off almost all of the rest of the gluten food to our friends, and he told me to block mother-in-law's number if she kept harassing me. I don't feel like the idiot, but I'm also highly emotional and sensitive to everything right now, and I'm not sure I'm reacting to things reasonably at this time. Most of my in-laws are mad at me. Am I the idiot? Mother-in-law brought homemade lasagna, pasta salad, muffins and 2 types of cookies, all full gluten. I'm a celiac and I laughed. She made all that but didn't have time to make one gluten-free thing. BS. She did it intentionally because she was mad your mom got to meet the baby before her. You are not the idiot. God bless that dear lady. She tried. The impression I get is that as well as making everything about herself, mother-in-law doesn't believe OP really can't have gluten. Her making so much with gluten, all her son's favourites, and then ranting about how hard and time-consuming it is to make anything gluten-free, sounds like she's blaming OP for not eating the food, as if OP has deliberately unreasonable expectations. I didn't get that impression at all. Mother-in-law 100% believes daughter-in-law has celiacs, but she's deliberately made everything with gluten, specifically so that OP couldn't eat it purely to spite her for not letting her see the baby sooner. Mother-in-law is rude as heck. She only had time to make her son's favourites. I'm 10 years postpartum, and I'm so mad at your story it's like I'm full of hormones too. Heck, that lady and her stupid cookies too. Don't let mother-in-law come over until you've healed. As a matter of fact, don't let her come over at all. On the bright side, OP, you have a wonderful best friend and her husband. I'm a grandparent to 3 lovely kids. It's a tradition that I make a baby blanket with the kid's name and give it to the father and mother so they can use it when the kid is born. It took me months to make this blanket due to my embroidering and working. For example, my oldest grandgirl has at least 100 little butterflies on it, along with her name. My grandson had different plants. In short, they take me a long time. The issue started when my daughter-in-law announced she was pregnant. I started making a blanket after asking the theme for the nursery. It was going to have planets and stars on it. Well, I needed the name to figure out how the planets were going to places and how much space I needed. No answer. I asked both again and my daughter got back, Abby. Okay, I started planning until my daughter called me up saying the name was Sam. This confused me and I called up my daughter-in-law asking if I had the right name. She told me to drop it and she isn't telling me. I again explained that I needed the name to make the blanket. Depending on how long it is, it may not fit in the area it needs to go, and I would need to change the design. She told me no. I asked my son the same question. So I didn't make it. Jennifer was born this week. My son and daughter-in-law are angry that I didn't make it. I told them I needed the name, but they weren't hearing it. Am I the idiot? I will still make her a blanket, so I think the claim I don't care about my grandkids at all is really messed up. You are the idiot. This sounds like a power versus boundary battle, and you've succeeded in punishing them for their boundaries. You really couldn't do anything at all without a name. A blanket can be made without the name and still be very personal. You were angry that you weren't being given the information ahead of time and so decided not to do it. It's your right not to make one, but you were punishing them. This reeks of missing reasons. Dollars to donuts that you made comments or suggestions when a name was given to you before the baby was born. You are being a petty toddler. There is no reason you need to know the name before the birth other than nosiness. What if one of your kids picked a name and changed the name once they met their baby? That happens frequently. The picked name doesn't fit the baby they meet. There's no reason for parents to announce the name on the birth certificate before the ink is dry. Not the idiot. It sounds like it's your tradition that you do this for your grandchildren, not their parents. So I disagree with the idiot crowd saying you should have just made a nameless blanket. That's not the gift you wanted to produce for your grandchild. You're entitled to make your gift however you envision it. It's fine that the parents wanted to keep the baby's name a surprise, but they cannot expect a finished blanket at the birth in that case. It's totally reasonable to assume once they revealed the name, a blanket would be worked on then. They are being unrealistic and unreasonable and honestly a bit entitled. The blanket isn't their gift. My wife and mother have never, not even for a fraction of a second, got along. This was 100% my mother's fault. From the moment I dared to bring my wife home, my mom was hostile, saying my wife wasn't good enough for me and trying to get me to move back home. And yes, it's a culture thing. I'm Mexican, my wife is Irish. I cut my mom off for a very long time and it pained me to do so, but it wasn't worth losing my wife. Well, my wife found out we were having a baby. We made the announcement and somehow my mom found out. She started sending me mailed letters, I had her blocked off everything, and through the mail she expressed her desire to be a grandmother and apologized multiple times. She said she would do better and be more accepting. After many long discussions with my wife, she caved and said my mom was welcome here for 4 days. She lives in Mexico, but we have a spare room, but I said I'd better stand up for her endlessly if my mom acts up. I agreed. My mom saved up for months to travel this way. We're in Colorado. She got here 2 days ago. Everything was fine at first, but tonight, crap hit the fan. Basically, my wife still has trouble eating. She's still nauseous, and whenever her breast milk comes in, it makes her sick to her stomach. She also won't and can't eat when she's nursing because it makes her sick. Well, our daughter is cluster feeding, so my wife has a very small window of when she can eat. Well, my mom wanted to make a cultural dish tonight for dinner to treat us to a meal, but she hadn't told us that this meal takes around 4 hours to cook and she started cooking at 4 p.m. My wife said she was going to eat something else because she couldn't wait that long to eat, and my mom was offended and said she was rude, which I immediately put a stop to and explained the situation. My mom stopped, but when my wife was eating, she kept giving her looks. I said, "Mom, stop it right now." She scoffed, said something under her breath, then turned to my wife and said, "In my culture, this is unacceptable. Since you're raising a child in my family, you will learn better." My wife immediately screamed at her, "Shut the heck up and let me eat or leave." My mom threw the hand towel, grabbed her stuff and left. I was so hurt by both of them. I told my wife she was a liar. She told me she would let me handle it and she didn't. Instead, she made my mom leave. I know my mom was wrong, but why couldn't she do this for me? I then left. She didn't even try to stop me. She texted me and said, "Why don't you go back with your mom?" Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. If anyone lied, it was you when you said you would handle your mother. You didn't handle your idiot mother. You let her pick and pick at your wife until your wife snapped and finally put your awful mother in her place. Grow a spine and support your wife. You are a moron, if ever there was a worse time to test a woman's patience. Do you understand how hungry you get when breastfeeding? It's worse than when you're pregnant, and your wife is already struggling to get enough calories in. You should have already moved your mom to a hotel or Airbnb or friend's house when she first started in on your wife. Your wife is tired, hormonal, and hungry, and your mom is entertaining herself by antagonizing your wife. You made a mistake reconnecting with your mom and should never have asked your wife to deal with her. Also, making a cultural dish that takes 4 hours in the home of a woman who's suffering from nausea, getting mad because a woman postpartum needs to eat when she can, the mother was looking for and making a problem. I'm going to repeat this in case it needs to be clarified. Your wife did not make your mother leave. Your mother made that big girl decision on her own. Your wife was right. You should go back with your mother. My girlfriend and I have dated for around 3 years. We've lived separately this whole time but obviously see each other often. Her lease at her current house, 1,800 square foot, will be up in a few months and we're discussing moving in together. She has 9 cats, a dog and a daughter. I have a dog. I own my house. I bought it 3.5 years ago before I met her, and it's about 400 square foot less than her place. She wants me to sell my house and move into the house she's renting and pay her rent when I have a perfectly good home to live in. I understand her concerns about space and the comfort of the animals, but 1,300 square feet isn't that small, and I feel like it would be a horrible financial decision to give up on my 2.8% interest rate and start renting again, especially because the value of my home will probably continue to increase. On top of that, her rent is more than my mortgage. She's adamantly against living in my house though, and is acting like I'm an idiot for trying to explain it's a bad decision financially to do this. But she seems to think I'm not making sacrifices for her if I don't move into her rented house. Am I the idiot? 9 cats? That woman doesn't rent a house, she runs a damn zoo. Your girlfriend needs an education in compromise. Compromise, it turns out, does not mean she gets whatever she wants and her opinion is right. You're an idiot if you disagree. Do not sell your house regardless of whatever else you do. Not the idiot. I cannot imagine wanting to live in an 1,800 square foot house with 2 adults, 2 dogs, a child, and 9 cats. The more I think about it, the more I realize that your girlfriend is either not being forthright or possibly doesn't even know she's unwilling to contribute to your house. She could resent that you have a house and she doesn't, and she could simply not want to contribute to a house and property that she has no ownership in, which, were it the case, would be hilarious because what do you think renting is, girl? Either way, this is a huge red flag. Okay, I'm just going to say it. Someone with 9 cats has issues. This isn't someone you want to share a home with permanently, and it's cruel to have that many animals in a small space. Say no. Keep saying no. If you want to rent a place together, then rent your house to someone else and try living together for a year, but not in your home. And good luck finding a landlord that will say yes to 9 cats.